This topic, when mastered, can change your whole direction in life. It definitely changed my path in life, and I love giving the gift of muscle to others. This presentation is going to just speak about muscle in a way that you won't hear spoken about anywhere else. It will also help you when you're doing the program to really understand why it is that we're doing things the way we do them, why things are different here, and you'll be able to understand other people's programs even better than they understand themselves. If you have a ton of confidence in yourself and if you've transformed your physique, that is a business card that can't be faked. That is a presence that you bring to things that tells people about your character, tells people about your discipline. And so I want you to have the body that you want to have, whether that means adding a lot of mass or whether that means improving, dropping body fat, whatever you need to do to get to your optimal physique. That's what Muscle Club is about. I'm here to support you, but the whole club is here on your team, wanting to see your transformation and wanting to see you win. This isn't an ego-driven, superficial thing. This is your path in life. This is who you are. This is who you show up as. This is who other people see you as. This is who you see yourself as. This is going to impact the jobs that you get or the success that you have as a business person, the partner that you have, the way that that partner treats you, the way that your children look at you if you go down that path as well. This is huge. It's going to impact your athletic career. Many athletes have made their career by having outlier physiques and then putting them to work. So this is your opportunity to understand what the best athletes are doing and what very few people have understood about muscle. The first thing I want to share here is that it's going to be demand driven. It's going to be demand driven. People think I'm going to eat my way to being very muscular. It doesn't work like that. If it did, all the fat people would have amazing physiques. Obviously, we know that they're going to add a lot more fat if they just try to drive muscle by fat and excess calorie consumption. But a lot of people make this mistake and they're just like, oh, I just need more calories and then everything's going to be fine. But when the training is average, when they don't have the strength and they don't have the work capacity, if you don't have the strength, if you don't have the work capacity, then just adding more calories is not going to be a successful approach. You're going to be frustrated because you're not getting the results that you want. And then so many people give up on this journey. You walk down the street, most men at some stage, they wanted to have great physiques. And now they don't, and they've given up. They've literally given up. They don't think about it anymore, or they've just accepted that, well, this is how it's going to be for me. I don't have the time. I can't afford the food. None of those excuses are actually valid once we get into it. And that's what you're going to understand with this, that any amount of time, almost any kind of food, you can actually get the results that you want if you work intelligently, if you create the demand. So we're going to create that demand where it's like a survival mechanism. Think about if you were told, okay, you have to go into the woods and you're going to chop down trees and you're going to carry those trees out. All you have is an axe. You're going to carry the logs from where you are to where they need to be. And you're going to do that for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. If you don't do it, then you're going to be executed. You're going to be given food, basic food, survival accommodation, go. What's going to happen to the computer geek average physique of the 21st century, that toffee body, thin on the outside, fat on the inside? Thin outside, fat inside is a very unhealthy way to be. That logging work is going to transform that physique. Demand is what's going to change the physique, because carrying that wood, swinging that axe, being extremely physically active in a demanding task, not just being on your feet all day and kind of buzzing around like you're a shopkeeper putting things on the shelves and things like that. That can sort of make you a little bit skinnier if you have just general activity, walking around and things like that. It's not going to make you look good. To actually look good, we need demand. Now, you don't need to go and do that logging experience. We just need to accumulate a bunch of tension, and we can do it a lot smarter in a very short period of time, so that your body has that stimulus of, okay, I need to grow or I'm going to die. The body wants to survive. The body doesn't want to be inflamed and damaged from the work that it's doing. And so we create a certain amount of damage, a certain amount of inflammation, or a strong metabolic stimulus, and the body will adapt to that so that next time it happens, it's more prepared for it. And so we're demand driven. This is the first thing to understand. With the training, we create demand. So the volume of the training and the gaining of strength is what drives for the tissues to want to accept the amino acids out of the blood. Okay, so supply side of things is important, and we're gonna talk here about supply. We want amino acids in the bloodstream when there is a demand for the amino acids in the tissues. So the training drives the tissues to be ready to absorb. Okay, you create that stimulus, the tissues are stimulated, the muscle is stimulated. Are there amino acids in the blood that can go into these muscle cells? We need that supply to be there, but first we want the demand to be there. If there's just a lot of amino acids in the bloodstream, but none of the cells are that hungry for them, then yes, some will go in there, especially if someone is really under-muscled, then you can definitely add muscle. You see this with vegans and vegetarians, that they add steak back in and they gain 3, 4, 5 kilos of muscle, but that's only going to get them to a certain level. That's only going to get them back to their normal. And then the food itself is not going to drive you to an elite physique. Only training demand and tissue demand, where the muscles are looking in the blood, okay, what's here? We need more amino acids. What's here? That demand needs to be there, and then we meet that with the supply. Okay, so the blood is the supply. Are we building the blood that is required to get the result that we want? Now, what you can put into the blood, amino acids, fats, sugars, your hormones are going to be there. All of these things are going to signal to the cells how good of an environment is to gain muscle. Our overall health, the healthier we are, the more vitality that we have, then the more training we're going to be able to tolerate. And so health was strength and health, like a lot of the old magazines. And if you look back at the history of strength training, they were all about cultivating strength for the sake of health, for the sake of longevity. And they were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they were following these healthy lifestyles. They were getting out in the sun, doing things like hand balancing, partner hand balancing. The scene of strength and health was actually much healthier than the modern day, bodybuilding scene that often turns into anabolics, and it's all inside and it's all in isolation with your headphones on, not being around community. It's a very different scene that is being cultivated. And to be honest, that doesn't resonate with me, and it doesn't resonate with a lot of people to sort of build mass in an artificial way for the sake of photos or whatever it is. Some people want to choose that, that's fine. Muscle Club is about maximizing your natural potential and getting to the physique that you're most proud of. And so another big issue that we see is time. Is time really the thing that's stopping you from having your ideal physique? I'm going to show you workouts here that are extremely time efficient. To be honest, nobody is lacking time as far as Muscle Club is concerned. If you do as many push-ups as you can in 4 minutes, that's enough stimulus for the day. If you do as many squats as you can in 4 minutes, that's enough stimulus for the day. If you do as many chin-ups as you can in 4 minutes, that's enough chin-ups for the day. That's enough stimulus, right? So it's not that time is going to be the limiting factor. I'm going to show you some clever ways to work out where we can do push-ups and trend towards either single arm or handstand push-ups, so we can build strength, build elite capacities in very short periods of time, so that we never have that reason or excuse again. If we can smash that reason, myth, excuse that I don't have enough time to train, because you can train with body weight, you can train at home, you need less than $100 worth of equipment. If that is the case, then nobody has the excuse anymore of I just don't have time. Fair enough that you might not be able to get to the gym if you've got full-time work, if you've got children, if you live a long way from work. It might be very difficult for you to get to the gym. Most people can, but I understand that. And priorities-wise, maybe it's not high enough on your hierarchy of needs to want to go to the gym. We can substitute the gym for a way that you can train at home in your bedroom, out the front of your house, in your park, in your backyard, whatever it is, there is a place that you can train, and there is a time that you can train, and you can create this demand within your muscle cells that they want to grow, that they want to be optimized, that can get you to where you want to go in terms of your physique. Now, what should we be aiming for? Having a target is actually a really, really valuable thing. We know psychologically that when someone has a clear target to aim for, they're likely to put a lot more effort in than if they don't know what they're aiming for. And so often if I speak to someone about what their goal is, they might have some really crazy numbers in their head. Like, oh, I want to be 5% body fat at 110 kilos and I'm 165 centimeters, right? So this is someone who's short, who wants to be super heavy, who wants to have crazy low body fat. I was like, well, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure with that. And so I gave you a really extreme example, but chances are you haven't really thought about what numbers you need to actually hit. And so you don't really know what you're doing, and therefore you're not likely to persist and keep going to get to numbers that are going to look really good, right? So you might just be able to look at the mirror and just go, yeah, I think I can get a bit better, and keep going. But for many, if we can have clear numbers, that can really help to stay on the path, to be consistent. There's a number of things that we're doing within Muscle Club to gamify this process so that you do stick it out. So you're much more likely to persist with it when others would stop, because you've got community support, because you know your numbers, because the workouts are really doable, because the workouts are fun, because we've got leaderboards. We're stacking as many things as possible in your favor. We're making the nutrition side really simple, cheap, effective. The more things that we can stack in your favor, then the more likelihood there is that you're going to get to where you want to go. You're going to have that phenomenal physique that you've always dreamed of. That is what I want for you. I want you to have confidence. I want you to have presence. So this is how we're going to get there. Very, very time efficient workouts. And are your genetics actually holding you back? Are your genetics holding you back? People blame their genetics before they've even invested multiple years in understanding what their potential is. If you go to a CrossFit gym, or if you look up masters female CrossFit athletes, you'll see people with a lot of muscle mass. And you might think, well, maybe these women in their 40s and 50s are genetic freaks. And you see their before photos and you see they just look like normal women. And now they look muscular. Chances are your genetics are not the limiting factor. Chances are you've never imposed the demand on your musculoskeletal system to know anything of what your genetics are capable of. No one in my family is big and lean. We don't come from a big bone structure, and there's no expectations that I was ever going to get to anything like the physique that I had. I trained quite hard, and I was encouraged by my family, and my father's a rugby coach, rugby league coach. He knows the body. I was encouraged by my family to kind of just accept that I was slow and that I wouldn't be that strong because of genetic factors. Now, it's impossible for them to know. It was impossible for me to know until I had really good methods, until I had great vitality, until I was putting the right things into my bloodstream, what I was capable of. Now, I'm not the biggest man. I'm not telling you that I've become the most muscular person for my height in the world. That's not, it's never going to happen. What I can say is that I've achieved a physique that I thought wasn't possible. When I was 65 kilos, when I finished high school, I'd already been strength training for 4 years, 5 years, pretty consistently the last 3, and I was 65 kilos at 181 centimeters. Now, by the numbers, you can be roughly, a good gauge here and a good number to remember is if you take the 1 off your height in centimeters, and if you're used to using feet, it's not too hard, use Google, convert your height into centimeters and then take off the 1. So if I'm 181 centimeters, then 81 kilograms is a good shredded target to aim for. This is like 6-7% body fat, 81 kilos. That's a really high level natural physique. Some people will genetically be more gifted and they'll be able to hold 3, 4, 5 kilos more than that. They'll put the work in, they'll be able to get a little bit more. And there might be a couple that are a little bit less. It might be that you only can get to 81 kilos and shredded with 10 years of dedication, or 79 kilos. Whichever way, you're going to have that physique looks really good. And you might think, well, that's actually pretty light. I'd like to be much heavier. That's fine, but you're probably not going to have that low body fat percentage, right? If you look at a rugby player that's 181 centimeters, that looks like they're 95 kilos, they look like a tank, they're going to be like 10% body fat or 12% body fat. They're going to have good genetics and they're going to have trained really hard and they've got to that position in terms of their body fat. So don't blame your genetics until you've at least put in 10 years of hard work. You might be like, well, I'm not willing to really put everything into this. Then you just set your target a little bit lower. So I was speaking to someone yesterday, 184 centimeters, 73 kilos. It's going to be really easy for him to get to 77, 78, 80, 81 kilos and to be pretty lean, like 8% at that. So he can have a huge improvement in his physique. It's not going to take the nth detail. The closer you get to your natural potential, the more dedicated you're probably going to have to be to get that number. But in saying that, half an hour of training a day on strength training is plenty. And that sounds crazy to most people because they're thinking, well, it's going to take me at least an hour in the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week. 20 minutes is probably too long for most people. There's probably actually too much muscular stimulus that can be created in a 20-minute period for most people to handle. It's not time that's the limit. If you're realistic about these numbers and you understand, well, I'm actually a long way from my genetic potential, then we're going to be able to improve you dramatically and quite quickly once we get the demand there. Okay, so in terms of knowing, well, is the demand right or is the demand what it needs to be? As you get stronger, the demand side is easier to control. So we want you to be really strong relative to your weight. As you become stronger, then in a given time period, you can produce a lot more force, a lot more tension on the muscle fibers. If you think of the muscle fibers as individual wires, well, those wires are going to respond. Those wires are intelligent wires. So we've got smart wires here. Talk about smartphones. Muscle is much smarter in terms of the biological adaptation that you can get, understanding the stimulus of the environment. Those wires are constantly responding to the demand that's placed on them. If I put this arm in a cast, then it's very quickly muscle's gonna wither, and I'm not gonna have the muscle mass that I have now. Whereas if I train this arm much harder than I train the other one, then it's gonna end up bigger. We know that is the case, and so with our training, we want to create the tension there, and the more strength that we have, the more drive we can get from the biological battery, from the brain to the muscle, and the more that fiber is able to be activated but then stretched and strengthened at the same time, or subjected to massive metabolic stimulus of all the metabolites that are building up in the area with extreme volume and pump. If that stimulus is there, then those fibers will change so that next time that happens, there's not as much muscle damage, or that the performance can increase, because the body will always assume that it's life or death. I'm throwing a lot at you here, but you should be taking notes. Come back and listen to this again. The body is going to assume that it's life or death. And so we have to create these stimulus where the body's like, well, if we're going to keep doing that task must have been really important because that was really painful, or with the metabolic stimulus, or that was really heavy in terms of the tension stimulus. Is like, well, that's clear, like getting somewhere close to the capacity that this tissue is capable of handling. There's an innate intelligence there, the same intelligence that's beating the heart, the same intelligence that we don't have to consciously think about beating the heart. We don't have to consciously think about the trillion cells in the body doing their work of expelling things that aren't needed there. I think it's about 70 trillion, right? Trillion cells per kilogram, something like that. We want that demand to be there. We need that demand to be there. and it's always going to be a key factor in getting to that ideal physique. So we want you to be crazy strong, and that's going to allow us to get the amount of work in that's going to cause the adaptation that we need. These are some of the fundamentals that when you understand them, then the training starts to make sense. Why are we doing this super high repetition stuff? Why are we training heavier than most people train when they're talking about hypertrophy? It's the two extremes that are going to give us the best results. When we get really strong and we're able to really recruit the muscle fibers very well, and we're able to tolerate massive amounts of work with light loads and with moderate loads, then that's when we're going to get the physique that we want. That's what's going to stimulate the change and get us to results that were previously unattainable. And so that woman at the CrossFit gym, she's not blaming her genetics. She's simply focusing on being able to do those strength movements and being able to do those metabolic workouts, and her physique becomes amazing in the process. I personally don't enjoy CrossFit style training. I don't want to train CrossFit. It's okay, but it's not for me. We can take lessons from that. It's the most successful functional bodybuilding or bodybuilding training system that's actually been used. More people have got crazy good physiques through CrossFit than any other system. And yes, maybe some of the top athletes have used anabolics and there's all those accusations and such. I can tell you, not everybody at your local CrossFit box is using anabolics, and there are a lot more well-developed physiques at the CrossFit box with that style of training than there are at the average commercial gym. Okay, so we need to take lessons from them about the stimulus that's there, but also the social side of training. And a big part of the reason for the amazing physiques that you'll find in the CrossFit box is because everybody else is doing the work as well. So there's that community side to things, and that's what's very important about participating in the Muscle Club as a club. If you participate, you're more likely to get better results sooner because of that social side. No one likes being the weakest link, and wherever you're starting from, that's fine. You know, I've been really weak, really skinny. I'm not going to look down on you for being where you're at. The thing is to choose a process and commit to it, and then add to the culture of the group by making the change that you've committed to. Okay, so these are some important foundations that when you understand them, muscle growth, muscle development becomes inevitable. If you think, well, could a 40 or 50-year-old lady significantly transform their physique? If you can see that those transformations are happening, then you can believe in your own transformation. And so we're going to use unconventional methods here. We're not going to be using 3 sets of 8 twice a week. That's not the system, because that can only produce conventional results. Conventional wisdom produces conventional results. Most people training like that lose motivation. They're not consistent. It's boring and it's ineffective compared to the best methods. And so you're being set up to fail with those systems. I'm going to go through a little bit more detail here, but that is our foundation knowledge inside a Muscle Club. I hope that's making sense. I hope you're taking a bunch of notes, and I hope you're fired up to see what your body is actually capable of through performance, through getting yourself to another level in terms of your absolute strength and the total amount of work that you can tolerate within a training session, within a week. Let's get this journey going. Let's get your muscle growing.